Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov. There is a knock at the door. You have to work with me here, people. Work with me. There's a knock at the door. It's the best I can do. There's a knock at the door. You open up the door, surprised to see two people, two obvious beggars. One of them, a man, is standing, in the bushes near your front door, clearly wearing tattered rags that are going to fall off him at any moment. You're not sure how much they are doing to cover his dignity at the moment in any case. He is, of course, asking for help with clothing. The second poor wretch is nearly faint with hunger, collapsing upon your doorstep, unsure whether he will be able to live another day without food. Who do you help? Both of them is the right answer. Great. Okay, good. I was just making sure we would get that basic information. Now, of course, in the good, time-honored rabbinic tradition, we have to turn the dial up to the point where we can get to the more interesting answer. Because helping them both, while absolutely the correct response, doesn't tell us very much other than that we should be nice. Imagine that you only, absolutely, incontrovertibly, with no help from neighbors, no help from any other way, no tricky other solution, don't try and think out of the box here, can only help one. Now, whom do you help? Right? Again, I don't want to hear tricky out of the box the solution of, well, my husband can help one and I can help one. No. Really, only one of them. Between the one who is on the verge of nakedness and the other who is on the verge of starvation. The one on the verge of starvation, because without food there is no Torah. Ein kemech, ein Torah. No food, no Torah. So that person takes priority in order that they can continue to exist. You're going for the naked guy. Sorry, it's just the way you phrased it. I'm going to take the other one. That's all right, so maybe let's write off the starving guy, right? He's a goner, right? Or maybe I can help him and maybe he'll recover, but the odds aren't great. Whereas the guy in need of clothes, all he needs is clothes. So throw some clothes on him, and if I can only help one, I'm going to put my help where I believe it will do the most lasting good, as opposed to the most immediate good. Any counter opinions or arguments? We've gotten two so far. As all the neighborhood cats know, indeed, you can't turn away even a hungry cat. So hunger has to come first over anything, over the clothing issue. Daniel, were you on the same side as about helping cats? Dying is worth. Starvation is final. A loss of dignity may be horrible and shameful for a few days until something can help, or eventually you get used to it. But death is it. So I need to put my best effort in preventing that unrepairable catastrophe. So far we've got a number of votes for helping the hunger more than the clothing. What did I say about being trickety-trick? I'll feed you if you give him. It's a great engineering solution of looking for ways to make all of the equation balance. No, he would be less clothed and starving, but better fed. So yes, obviously we would look for ways to try and arrange the solution so that everyone could be helped. But we're not going to go with. I know. This is what everyone who ever studies Talmud always says. Whenever we get to a crazy situation in the book, they say, but wouldn't there be a simpler solution? Of course there's a simpler solution, but the simpler solution doesn't highlight the deepest level of our value and principles, which is necessary sometimes for making tough choices. And if you think you're not making tough choices today, then you're not paying attention to the choices you make. And right now, you may find this an interesting and perhaps humorous hypothetical, but I'm going to get real in just a minute after I get a few more opinions, because I saw a number of hands and I hate to ignore hands. Help the naked one. Because? With dignity, he'll be able to get his life more in order and go on, and the starving guy, sorry, nothing I can do for you, bud. As a matter of fact, when you starve to death, the other guy will have 2 sets of clothes. Sorry, too dark? Too dark? Too soon.
I think it's the person who's starving because of the necessity for preservation of life.
Preservation of life, we still come back to that. A person without food is going to die. A person without clothes is most likely not, except in other parts of the world where the weather can be even worse than here in Florida. At this moment, I have to help the hunger person. All right? Are both of them good people? Do a quick moral check. Right? Could you turn out your pockets to see if you have any drug paraphernalia? Not going to do so much for the guy with no clothes. Can I see your criminal record? Can you apply through a formal means of appeal? And again, this is why the hypothetical is they are at your door and you can only help one. But if the answer is I would help neither unless I was sure they were worthy of my help, then that is still an answer. But there would be no way to actually investigate the worthiness prior to it. So if you were not going to help unless you're sure, then I guess in this case you wouldn't help. Last one.
What is the weather outside?
So if you're in the middle of a blizzard in Buffalo, New York, then maybe the clothing is a life and death situation just as much as the person starving, which does indeed move the needle. And in fact, we're going to go ahead and cut to the chase. Judaism has recognized that these are not only hypothetical situations. Yes, in our affluence, and all of us here would be affluent compared to almost any of our pre-modern ancestors. In our affluence, we often forget that our ancestors helped each other when they had next to nothing. And oftentimes they would only be able to help one person at a time. Oftentimes they would be pained to be able to give a little bit of bread, knowing that they would become hungrier for the loss of that bread, but that they could help this person survive another day. And so they had to make these choices from time to time. And when the choice came up, and not a crazy hypothetical for them, but the harsh reality of their world, the sages tell us, you feed the hungry first. That hunger takes priority over clothing. Yes, all other things being equal, not a blizzard, not the danger, not somebody who's going to be murdered by the officials for being naked in the street, all other things being equal, of course dignity is important, but life is more important. Now this is something that in the modern world many people have difficulty with. After all, as we already heard from a number of different voices, it seems like you might be throwing your money away on helping the person that's near starvation. That you may be just getting them another day, but what are they going to do tomorrow? And the next day, and the next day? If they are on the verge of starvation today, then isn't feeding them just going to prolong their agony as they eventually will die? And therefore, if you can't support them forever, better to help the person where you will get the more philanthropic bang for your buck. What is the greatest payoff for where you are doing your tzedakah, for doing your charity? And these are calculations that we still make to this day. And yes, we do it from a relative position of comfort. Again, relative to our ancestors, not trying to say that everybody here is a Bill Gates capable philanthropist. But in relative terms, we are in a more comfortable place, but we know that we still cannot help everyone. Which brings to the second matrix of who do we help? If there is a person that is very distant, that is in dire need for medicine, for food, for clothing, and there is somebody that is local, that is in less dire need in terms of absolute values. They are not starving, they are not immediately ill, they are not immediately naked, but they need help to make rent, to be able to keep their apartment, to make a payment to keep the lights on, to keep the heating on, to be able to have a little extra food so their kids can go to school without, with a full stomach rather than being hungry. Am I obligated to help the beggar that I meet more than the distant beggar that I don't even know but has a more desperate situation? Who do I help in that situation? The person that is in need that I encounter, or the person I never encounter but who on paper has a much more severe need? Do I help war refugees, or do I help my local Big Brother and Big Sister program? Do I help those that need vaccines in remote parts of the world? Or do I put money into a local hospital to help buy them another MRI machine? Obviously the answer is both. But let's be honest, how many more people will that MRI machine cure? How many people will helping that Big Brother, Big Sister program keep alive? And how much will the comparable amount of money do to transform a life in some other part of the world that is far from these shores, or some places in America even that may be far from your own neighborhood? Isn't there more bang for the buck to be found in those other places? Can I feel good about giving $5 to someone on the street corner when I know that same $5 will give all of the childhood inoculations needed for some child in sub-Saharan Africa? Well, Judaism says, yeah, you have to help the local. You have to help those you meet. There's a reason I began with the knock on the door. The knock on the door is a demand in Judaism. It is not a request, it is a demand. There is a case in front of you, a just cause, and it has come to your doorstep. It has been arranged by God that you will have this opportunity to help this person in need. You have encountered the need, and by having encountered it, you are now responsible to do what you can. Doesn't mean you sell your house and car and everything else in order to help this person, but you do have to give some assistance to a person that you encounter. Even if you know that more distantly there is somebody more deserving, more worthwhile, and more in desperate need, the knock was on your door from this person, and you do not have the right to turn them away. You don't have the right to ignore them once you have encountered somebody asking you for help. Yes, Daniel?
Somebody holding a sign next to my window at an intersection. They knock on my door.
So it becomes more complicated in some of our modern situations, and this is something that I wrestle with as well. That oftentimes there are ways that people are asking for help that we are unsure of exactly what they are asking for and such. There's a beautiful line in the Talmud that says, "Thank God for those who are deceptive beggars, because they give us a cover for whenever we do not help those that we encounter, because perhaps this person is not truly in need." So in general, we are not fully obligated unless they approach you. Being near them does not necessarily create the obligation. But on the other hand, you may consider helping them after I continue with what I'm saying. The reason that our rabbis argue that we have to help the person who knocks on a door, apart from the basic idea of tzedakah being justice, that this person has now presented a demand, and as a demand of Torah, you are obligated to help, the same as if you were obligated to keep kashrut or Shabbos. They also say there are emotional, psychological reasons why you would help the local poor that come to you for need. And it's called to treat you how to have compassion. Because you might think I'm having compassion by writing my check and sending it off to Bangladesh. You might feel amazingly fulfilled knowing that your donation, that little credit card that you entered online, is going and the funds are going to be used to provide essential services around the world. But you have not actually recognized the full humanity of the person in need. You have not answered the particular cry of a person in desperate situation. And as doing so, you have not truly opened up your heart to see the grieving, the suffering, the misery of another person that you could help. If you are willing to walk over the body of a person who is asking you for just a loaf of bread in order to be able to donate $1,000 to somebody you'll never meet, then you are missing the point of tzedakah. It is not about how much you give, because none of us can ever give enough, because there is always going to be need, as the Torah says. It is about how open you have allowed yourself to become to hear the need of others. And even when you have to turn away without being able to help, to feel brokenhearted at that situation, to feel sad that you cannot do more. This is what tzedakah is trying to teach us, not just because Judaism loves guilt, but because tzedakah is trying to tell us that we have an obligation one to another because we are together. Because we are one nation, one family, one humanity. And if you can look in the eyes of somebody in need, and you can look at them with cold, dead eyes and say, not you, I'll help them, then you are missing what God has called us to do in this life. Now, sometimes, as I say, it can be hard to know, do I help this person, do I not? How do I judge the situation? And in those times, yes, it may be that you choose, I don't know, this person seems a little sketchy. But when you don't, for God's sake, feel bad about it and look for someone else that you can help. I'm not saying that you have to help everyone. Unfortunately, we can't. But if you must turn away, recognize the pain that we are called upon to feel. And if you can help, well, answer the door. Shabbat Shalom.